This Shabbos we will read the zt'l EIKEV, which contains a continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu's admonition of the Jewish people. Therein we find the mentioning of various events and sins that occurred throughout the journey in the desert. There are also words of encouragement to the new generation that will go into the land of Israel. Hear, O Israel, today you cross the Jordan to come and drive out nations that are greater and mightier than you. Hashem warns that they will encounter larger, mightier nations, but for them to remember that Hashem, your God, He crosses before you, a consuming fire. He will destroy them and He will subjugate them before you. After Moshe again tells the story of the sin of the golden calf, we read, Now, O Israel, what does Hashem your God ask of you? Only to fear Hashem your God, to go in all His ways and to love Him, and to serve Hashem your God with all your heart and all your soul. Several questions arise. First, as the sages ask in the Talmud Berahos 33b, is fear of God a small matter? Seemingly, when Moshe states, What does Hashem ask of you? He is intimating that it is nothing big, a small thing, simply just fear Him, not a significant request. However, we know that it is not so easy, it is not a small matter. How many times do we beseech Hashem for a life with fear of God, a life that there be within us the love of Torah and the fear of God? Every day we ask Hashem that He should unify our hearts to love and to fear your name. So why does Moshe make it seem so insignificant? The sages answer, Indeed, for Moshe it is a minor matter. Fear of Hashem is easy. They present a parable. There was a man who is asked for a large vessel. If he has one, it is a small request. It is like someone asked him for a small vessel. However, one who is asked for a small vessel but he does not have one, this is a major request. It is as if he was asked for a large vessel. The Torah Tamima and other commentators ask, why did the sages focus their question only on fear of God? Was that the one and only demand? A whole list follows. To go in all His ways and to love Him, and to serve Hashem, your God, with all your heart and all your soul, to observe the commandments of Hashem and His decrees. Are the others then of less significance and not as important? Why do the sages only ask whether fear of God is a small matter? Why do they only ask about fear of God? Why don't they ask about going in all His ways? Is that so easy? Interestingly, in the chapter of Tehillim, LeDovid Hashem Ori, which we will soon begin to say every day for the whole month of Elul until Shmini Atzeres, David says, One thing I asked of Hashem, that I would sit in the house of God all the days of my life. The Midrash comments that Hashem said to David, At the start you said that you ask only one thing, and then you have a whole list. To behold the delight of Hashem, and to visit in His sanctuary. For Him to hide me in His shelter on the day of evil, to conceal me in His tent, to elevate my head above my enemies. David answers, Master of the world, I learned from you. At the onset you asked, Now, O Israel, what does Hashem, your God, ask of you? Only to fear. You also at first only said that you demand only one thing, fear of God, and then you started with a whole list of commandments. It is difficult to understand two things. First, David's justification, just because Hashem did similarly, even though it is a principle taught in Berahos 58b that a servant should emulate his master. Second, what is the explanation as to why Hashem had indeed in such a manner presented His demands? The answer possibly is that each, Hashem and David, presented his main motif and purpose. Everyone in life has many different wishes, dreams, strivings that one wants to achieve to be successful and enjoy. However, everyone must also have a primary goal, which is the purpose of his life. Surely David had different wishes and needs for which he petitioned. However, one thing he asked, one primary request that he had and will always demand, was to sit in the house of Hashem. Likewise, Hashem has many demands of us. However, the main one is to fear Hashem, your God. Fear of Hashem. If one has fear of heaven, then following all the other demands of us is much easier. Still, the sages answer in the Talmud Berahos 33b that indeed for Moshe it is a minor matter. For Moshe, fear of heaven is easy to achieve, is not understandable as to how it is applicable to us. For Moshe it was easy as he was in the heavens. Hashem spoke with him directly, face to face. Hashem taught him Torah. All secrets of the Torah were revealed to him. The divine presence spoke through Moshe's throat. Moshe was a godly man. For him, fear of heaven is easy. That was his whole essence. However, for the Jews it is difficult. How then is this an answer that justifies making such a demand of the Jews? Additionally, what is the meaning and significance of the parable of the large vessel and the small vessel? It is explained that the answer was that indeed by Moshe it was a small matter. In Moshe's presence it was easy and small. When one is in the presence of the godly man, it is easy to acquire fear of heaven. The influence of his personality, his character, his Torah knowledge, his prophecy, his godliness, inspire fear of heaven on all the Jews. Therefore Moshe said, Now, O Israel, now Israel is the time to acquire fear of heaven. Now it will be easy. Later it will be difficult. Now as long as I am still with you, while the large vessel, an allusion to Moshe, is still around, then it remains easy. Everything, if it is done at the right time, is relatively easy. If one waits, it is difficult. If one delays even longer, it becomes even more difficult until it becomes virtually impossible. They say that it is difficult to be a Jew. We must remember that we must not delay. If one does something today, it is easier. Tomorrow it will be more difficult. All the while that we still have Jews from the previous generation, the Gedolim and Tzaddikim, the survivors, it is a bit easier to preserve the Masorah, the traditions and behavior. Now, Israel, indeed when you are in the presence of Moshe, it is a small matter. There are many things that we don't properly appreciate when we have them. Only once they are no longer do we recognize how precious they were. On the verse, Hear, O Israel, today you cross the Jordan, the Midrash states a law, when a Jew drinks water to quench his thirst, what blessing does he need to make? Reb Tarfon says, Borei Nefoshos, who creates numerous living things and their deficiencies. The sages say that he must make the blessing, Shehakol, through whose word everything came to be. We find this dispute also in the Mishnah in Talmud Berahos 44. In the Code of Jewish Law it is decided, as is our practice, that prior to drinking one makes a Shehakol and afterward one makes a Borei Nefoshos. The Tiferes Yisroel explains that since water does not nourish but rather simply quenches thirst, it is therefore different than all other nutritious edible foods that do not grow from the earth, and for which we make the blessing Shehakol. Hence there is uncertainty as to the proper blessing. Possibly we can also explain that water is so ubiquitous that one doesn't recognize its worth and importance. Only when it is not available, only when one is thirsty, does one then see how precious and important water is. Therefore Reb Tarfon states that one must make the blessing of Borei Nefoshos, who creates numerous living things and their deficiencies. We acknowledge its deficiency, for the value of water is most appreciated when there is none available. So too it is with parts of the body. We don't realize the blessing of eyes for seeing, ears for hearing, feet for walking, hands for doing, until God forbid they are lacking. We must learn to appreciate the older generation while they are still with us. Precious, beloved fathers, mothers, grandmothers and grandfathers, rabbis and teachers, now with them and in their presence, it is easier to fear Hashem and to follow His commandments.